Today we will have a really, really interesting discussion, I hope, to discuss how a large corporation as Daimler has started doing a few years ago something that we as innovation advisor are experiencing that has been today for many other corporations. So what I'm experiencing today is actually we got as Mind the Bridge the request to do scouting for large corporations since a few years. And the typical request was help us to find interesting innovation on these specific areas. And these specific areas are areas that are pretty close to the core business. And what is happening now that we get more and more requests to do scouting in areas that are far from the core business. And what I'm seeing today actually is something that I have the privilege to see it happen a few years ago, the first time that we met, Stefan. And because it's something that actually Mercedes-Benz Van is doing since a while, actually scouting for innovation outside of the core business. And so I would like to start our chat today to try to understand how and specifically this project started inside Daimler. What are the reasons? What have you done? What have been pursued? What has been the goals? Can you help us to understand a bit more, get a more context?
Yeah, I'm pleased to do that, and thanks for having me here. I very much appreciate the invitation. So, to give you some insights of what we're doing at Daimler, specifically at the light commercial vehicle business unit, the so-called van division, Mercedes-Benz vans, with the Sprinter as the icon of that division. Roughly 4 years back, this time I was heading the strategy department. We found out, and this is not surprisingly, that as an incumbent it's going to be very hard, we imagined in the future, to stay profitable, to maintain profitable growth, because competition is getting more and more. And we deliberately chose to set up a team I'm now heading, to go after innovations beyond the current core business. And when I say innovations, I don't have only in mind as an engineer technologically innovations, but also business innovations. So the whole team, called Future Transportation, was set up that way to explore fields beyond core business, beyond interior, exterior, drivetrain, chassis, and stuff like that, and to deliver value for us as well as for our customers beyond the current van as a product. And that's what we've been doing since then. And the approach we chose was not to do that only in a kind of incubation mode internally, but also to invest in one or the other selected startup and work with these companies very closely to push the envelope for the startup as well as for us.
So probably, again, just to get an example of such an approach, probably the most visible example of what you've done is the one that brought you to invest firstly in a VIA, that is Israeli-US mature startup, and that brought to the creation of joint venture that's called ViaVan. Can you elaborate a bit more about this example? Because it's quite interesting to understand the way you approached such a...
Thanks very much. Maybe the slide you see here explains it in a bit more detail. What we did is we did two investments, so to say, in Via Inc., a company which is based in New York City. Their development team is based in Tel Aviv. And we participated in the Series C and in the Series D round. So they were not a small startup anymore back then. This was back in 2016 and 2017. What we also did in 2017, we formed a joint venture, a 50-50 joint venture with them, where we invested $50 million. They invested $50 million. So 2 years back, the company ViaVan was founded. I'm not only wearing my future transportation hat from Mercedes-Benz Vans, I'm also a board director of ViaVan since then. And the business we're in is called on-demand transit. If you have, let's call it a blurred look at it, you would consider it to be something similar to Uber or Lyft, but it is to some degree different. It's different in terms of we want to have shared rides, pooled rides. What we do on-demand transit in Amsterdam, in London, in Berlin, in Milton Keynes, and in some other locations. And the way we do it is in different business models. We do it in Amsterdam and in London in a so-called consumer business, where we run the platform and freelance drivers come, bring their own van along, and we match demand and supply to fulfill the customer's needs who want to go from A to B. And while they're going from A to B, other people are picked up. So at the very end, we share the rides. We have a lot of passenger kilometers traveled with less vehicle kilometers traveled. That reduces congestions, of course, and CO2 emissions and so on. And that is one business model. Another business model is we give our software, our platform, in a software as a service business model to cities, to public transportation agencies. And we're doing fairly well on that. All around Europe, we are gaining ground and winning more and more contracts. And the third business model, which I consider to be the most interesting one, is a transportation as a service business model, where the whole benefits of having an incumbent like Mercedes-Benz Vans and a scale-up like Via, forming that joint venture ViaVan, where they can now leverage all their power they bring in. Because in the transportation as a service business model, the one we do in Berlin, maybe the next, this slide shows it, we bring along our vehicles, our vans. So it's the Vito Tourer, the V-Class, 50% of them already battery electric vehicles. We bring the Via technology, which is the software platform matching demand and supply. We bring the operational excellence as a third layer, so to say, where we run that whole business on behalf of the BVG, the Berliner Verkehrsgesellschaft. So that's the public transportation agency we serve, and we supplement, so to say, their existing offer to the citizens in Berlin with that new service called on-demand transit. And there's also a fourth layer I would like to talk about, where we also see the synergies formed, because in order to run that business in the most efficient way, you can imagine you have to do a lot of shift planning. There are more than 400 drivers registered for BerlKonig, as we call it in Berlin. There are more than 150 vehicles deployed. And now how do you assign all the different drivers to the vehicles, which are not in one place only, there are 3 places. So you have to do that in the most efficient way possible. And what we developed is a solution. My team developed it. We call it Van to Share. It offers the drivers as well as the people cleaning the vans overnight and so on, the possibility to gain access with a smartphone to the vehicles, where all the shift planning is done with that software as well. And at the very end, it's a kind of a layer which forms a kind of a glue between our core business layer, the technology, the vans, plus the new layer of technology, the Via technology. And here comes that van to share layer as a kind of a glue. So at the very end, it's a complete technology stack we developed, and that gives you an example of how we as Mercedes-Benz Vans are working with that scale up. And that complete technology stack is now offered to BVG and to other PTAs as well as corporates in the meantime. And we're doing well on that.
So this is technically a great example of co-development.
Yeah.
And going back to this process, again, we launch new kind of services that has been jointly designed. How this co-development, co-origination process work? Who has been the originator, the leader of the discussions, being your team, the Via team? What's help us to understand again, because you are planning new kind of services together with a startup.
Yes.
Each of you is putting on the table, bringing on the table their own expertise, and then there is an additional layer that is the co-creation piece.
Yeah.
How does it work?
Absolutely.
Again,
I mean, first of all, the whole attitude needs to be the way that the two teams, or the three, so to say, it's Via, it's Mercedes-Benz Vans, and it's ViaVan.
That is a new company.
Yeah,
Yes.
the JV, they need to feel and act as if they were one team. That's the base layer, so to say, the foundation to really work most successfully.
And was that easy?
It was. It's at the very end, the attitude. I don't know how it works in other big corporations, but what we tried, and I think what we achieved, is to really meet the company on eye level. Never treat them as if they were a supplier supplying something to the big Daimler corporation, but meet them on eye level. Yeah. And give them as much empowerment to explore potential fields of developing the business.
So the Via and the ViaVan example, I think, probably is the more structured example, because you made an investment, that you decided it was enough stuff to create a joint venture, and so you created a new company for launching a new novel services based on this cooperation. There are other examples when you start working, like for example Matternet, when you invested and with the goal to start piloting, testing new solution. Can you elaborate a bit more on this example? I find it pretty interesting.
Yes, sure. Now we are leaving the area of the transportation of people. We are now moving towards transportation of goods. And as you probably know, vans are, to a large degree, devices for the transportation of goods. And what we explored 3-4 years back, that drones are considered to be a serious means of transportation, for last mile logistics. It's probably some way to go, but we thought, hey, if vans are a device for the transportation of goods, and if drones are a device for the transportation of goods on last mile applications, of course, we should start to work with that. What we did is we did an investment in a company called Matternet. They are based in Menlo Park in the Silicon Valley. And again, there we did not just invest and attended the quarterly board meetings. We really deliberately formed a team within my area of responsibility to work with Matternet and to explore what can be done in the combination of Mercedes-Benz vans plus drone delivery. So what we did, and that's already 2 years back, we've deployed a service in a pilot. It's not a serious service right now, but in a pilot. We deployed a service in Switzerland in a highly regulated area. We deliberately did not go to any country where regulations are low. In a densely populated area, Zurich. And what we also did is we teamed up with an e-commerce platform. I'm not sure if it exists anymore, but 2 years back, it's been called Zero. These days back, they had two main investors, Swisscom and Co-op, and they ran an e-commerce platform where not only e-commerce companies participated, but also brick and mortar stores in Zurich. And now what we did is we teamed up with one of these companies, one company running a brick and mortar store, delivering special coffee beans to their customers. And what we established is the real customer orders went into that e-commerce platform of Zero. Zero passed it on, as they always do it, to their partner, to that coffee selling company. And now we enabled them to deliver instantaneously to the customer. How was that done? We had drones there. The order was packed and attached to the drone, and now the drone was launched and flew into the delivery area in Zurich where the customer lives. Now, most customers, as probably you as well, don't have a landing pad in their backyard or front yard.
I do.
Yeah, you do. so how do you deliver via drone to such a customer? Yeah, and we are talking about real customer, not people who were just selected. Yeah. So what we did is we said our vans are to a large extent used as parcel delivery vans anyhow. So why not using the parcel delivery van, which is in the area anyhow, use it as a landing pad for the drones. So what we did is whenever a drone was approaching, we directed the parcel delivery van to a so-called rendezvous point. There, the van waited for the drone to come. The drone landed on the roof of the van. There was a special roof with landing technology also equipped. Yeah, the package was delivered on the roof of the van. The drone went back, and the parcel courier could now pick the coffee package from the roof of the van and deliver it to the customer. So the customer got its package within 2 hours roughly. It allowed the brick and mortar store, the coffee selling company, as well as Zero, to now compete with fairly large e-commerce giants. You can imagine who I'm talking about. In instantaneous delivery, in same-day delivery, something they could not achieve at all on their own. And this shows you how we approached it. So what did we learn? We learned a lot about safety, about regulations, about how to operate that. And I can tell you, we had touch points with Sky Guide, with Kantonspolizei, with the Federal Office of Civil Aviation, FOCA, and so on and so forth. We learned really tremendously large amount of stuff. And now we're back in stealth mode, so to say. The moment regulations are ready and the moment air traffic control systems based on that regulations are ready, we will be ready to scale up and to launch services like that together with Matternet. Yeah, and what is publicly known is that in the meantime, Boeing invested in Matternet as well. So you can now use your imagination what can be possible with two large players, Boeing and Daimler, plus a scale-up like Matternet in the future once regulations are right.
Talking about going back to your 3-4 years of experience, how many pilot have you, again, as a ballpark figure, started with startups in such an innovative, not so close to the core business areas?
Not all of them are public, but I tend to say roughly a dozen of true pilots where we're not just playing around for a week or so, but where we invested considerable resources and people and money. Roughly 12, something like this, yeah.
And if you should, again, one of the big topic talking about open innovation and having corporates into the innovation game is the concept of that corporates are, by definition, by culture, risk averse. And so one of the problems that we are facing anytime we talk about innovation, open innovation with corporates, especially we are trying to implement it, is how they evaluate success. How they measure the success rate. Because in the corporate world, 1 out of 10 or 2 out of 10, 15% probability, 8% probability, these are the normal ratio when you're doing something that is really innovative, because when you do something that is not innovative, typically you get 100% ratio of execution, but you're not bringing nothing new on the table. When we are really doing innovation, the percentage of successes typically are small because it's difficult by definition, and the typical outcome is it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so their time is that they got excited, they want to start, and when they start considering the ratios, they got cold feet, they move back. And so talking about your, again, dozen circa POC, what could be what you consider a success rate of them?
What we see is 30 to 40%. Let's put it the other way. All of them were successful, even the ones who falsified the hypothesis we placed in them, of course, generated a successful learning for us. Yeah, but the ones who could potentially have an impact on the balance sheet of Mercedes-Benz vans, could generate a profitable business, I tend to say it's 30 to 40% of the ones we started. Yeah. Not all of them are public, of course. Yeah. With some of them, we are in one special one I have in mind. We are in the process of carving it out. We have already founded a separate legal entity. The team is about to in transition to that separate legal entity, and we will see whether it can flourish and be very successful. But there are 30 to 40% of the bets we placed where I think there's a good chance that we will make profit with it. Yeah.
And talking about these pilots, again, there is a lot of learning, trying to do things for real. You're not just what is the original design that you have to execute. You make some example of something that didn't work it out or not work it out as planned because some small details. You have something that pops up to your mind that, for an example of how sometimes in the execution you find something that is small things that block the things to happen.
Sometimes small, sometimes bigger, but one thing which is public and you could look up in the internet on YouTube, similar to what we've done here with Matternet on drone delivery. We also invested in Starship Technologies, an Estonian-based company, which was founded by the former Skype founders, Ati Heinla and Janus Fries. And they do delivery robots rolling up and down the sidewalks, delivering packages. And we teamed up with them, similar to what we've done here with Matternet. And we thought it's very, very good and smart idea to use our vans as a kind of a mothership for these robots, and have the following procedure: the van doing its parcel delivery route in the delivery area, let's say a residential area, and from time to time you release the robots, 8 of them. They do deliveries as well. You continue your parcel delivery route, and after, let's say, half an hour, you recollect the 8 robots, you replenish them with new parcels, and off they go again. At the very end, it turned out to be not successful in terms of economically successful. And the way we did it is we also did a real-life pilot. We went to Tallinn, where Starship Technology is headquartered, and in the course of, I think it was 5 weeks, if I'm right, we did more than 1,000 deliveries of parcels to real citizens of Tallinn, the Estonian capital, in a certain area. And we got customer feedback, of course. We measured the efficiency gains, but we also measured how much distraction we brought into the normal delivery process of a parcel delivery man, because he had to take detours, he had to find the right parking spot to recollect the robots, replenish them, let them go again, and so on. So, and at the very end, we found out it's not as successful as we thought. Yeah, there were efficiency gains to be measured, but on the other side, it didn't justify the investment in all these technology, and therefore we stopped continuing that. Yeah, that's also happening. But you have to try that out. I don't think that you can work that out on a flip chart or on a whiteboard. You have to dare to go there, and you have to be willing to go into blind alleys at the very end, and that's what we did in that example.
Yes, because there is in the details most of
Yeah.
the time. Yes, that's great. Talking about learnings again, I think in our prior conversation, you often mention the responsibility of the full process. So can you elaborate a little bit more about that?
Yeah. First of all, I think one success factor and one recommendation I could give to all the corporates as well as the scale-ups and startups when they work together, one should keep that kind of innovation which truly seeks to go beyond core business, separate to the core business. I report directly to the CEO of Mercedes-Benz Vans, and I'm not part of the product engineering department or the sales and marketing department or any other department. So the direct link and the direct protection, so to say, and the direct support from the CEO is I tend to say mandatory. Why is that? And that goes towards answering your question. The paradigms are completely different, I tend to say. I myself spent 16 years of my career in product engineering department passenger cars here at Mercedes-Benz. And now with almost 4 years now of experience in that future transportation field, I can tell you it's a complete different ballgame, complete different paradigms apply. The core business needs to be as risk adverse as possible. They should not take a lot of risks, because you cannot place 5 risks in the launch of the next E-Class or C-Class or S-Class. It's just too important for the core business to have that as good as possible. On the other hand, what we are doing, you have to place bets and you have to embrace risk that something will not work out like that. And along goes not only that perspective of how you look at risks, it's also about how you look at efficiency. The core business is trained, everyone is trained to be as efficient as possible. It's absolutely mandatory in order to be competitive in the automotive industry. On the other hand, if you place 10 bets and only 3 of them turn out to be successful and 7 were for the dustbin, so to say, that's not efficient. At least not efficient to the standards of the core business. And another thing is in the core business, you always encounter people who want to have a neatly laid out plan from the very beginning. But if I was able to really write down a plan for the next 3 years, it wouldn't be really an innovation, because an innovation by its very nature cannot be predicted to that degree that you can write down a plan with all the milestones and everything for the next 3 or 4 years. The same applies to business cases. How can I write down a serious business case in the first quarter of when I just started to deal with, let's say, here vans and drones? That's just impossible. I cannot fill in all the nice templates the core business provides me with. They need to place trust in me. They need to give me empowerment. They need to look at me more like an entrepreneur than just someone fulfilling a role in the core business. So it's a completely different setup.
And so I think if you get it right, on the one hand, top level buy-in is one of the, because innovation needs top level protection. Because the typical corporate culture is by definition is not able to understand and tolerate such a different way of doing things. That is the only way possible. That is forward, and unfortunately, is unpredictable. The other one that you mentioned is organizational segregation in a certain way. I think also inside your unit, you're partially separate from the rest of the team. I think you're part of it. Let's go back a bit. And your team, if I remember right, you have a piece in Stuttgart, a piece in Palo Alto that is separate from the Sunnyvale corporate office. Can you give us some more information about how your structure organized?
First of all, the team, and myself, I report to the head of MB Vans, of the CEO of Mercedes-Benz Vans, and we are roughly 130 people in Stuttgart. And when I say people, it's all in. It's ranging from computer scientists, engineers, electrical, mechanical engineers, business people, psychologists, doing UCX, stuff like that. So even designers are part of the team. So everyone's there. And there are roughly 30 people in the valley, in Silicon Valley. They're placed in Menlo Park. Organizational wise, they belong to Research and Development North America, which is belonging to Mercedes-Benz passenger cars. But that's just because it was suitable to place them there organizational wise. We pay them with a service level agreement, which we have in place, and of course, I'm in frequent contact with them many times per week, and I'm flying out next Tuesday to meet the team there again. So this is how we are structured, and yes, we are separate, but what we also do is, because there is so much power we could leverage in the cooperation, of course. Take the procurement department. The procurement department has a lot of power, negotiation power, and so on. So why not using that? Take external affairs. Take the press department, for instance. So there is a lot of advantage we could take from the corporate world. So what we do is we deliberately build bridges between my team and the core business teams wherever we find it beneficial. Not the other way around. It's not allowed that the corporate tells us they build now a bridge and help us, because that could be the kiss of death at the very end. Mm-hmm. But the way that we build bridges from our team towards them, that's completely acceptable. One example is we have very, very skilled people in the workshop doing prototyping. So why should I build a team on my own doing prototyping? So what we did is we found an agreement to leverage that capabilities in the core business. So this is the way we work with them.
So a sort of separate state that's part of the partnership that can provide, and you can leverage all the remaining assets that you have. Yes, by the way, it's not a model that just you, but other corporates are following similar model of segregating the innovation department as much as possible. Aside from the corporate, probably the most leading example in the world is Philip Morris, that created probably a separate entity to deal with not the traditional products. And so. Okay, so first of all, Stefan, thank you for spending some time with us. I think really
it's my pleasure.
Interesting learning, and let's continue this conversation. I'm looking forward to what will happen next.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks very much.